we'll go back in history and talk about the Egyptian queens. Today our focus will be on Queen Hatshepsut. We'll try to know more about this queen and her achievements, and we are joined by Mr. Samir Abbass, Egyptologist and researcher. Good morning.
Good morning, Shireen. Good morning, Muhammad.
Good morning, Mr. Samir. A real pleasure having you again.
Me too.
Mr. Samir, now let's know more about the Queen Hatshepsut and her achievements and rule to Egypt.
So first of all, I would like to remind our audience that we are still covering the big subject of mysteries of ancient Egypt, and that's another episode. That's like number 6 in our series about the mysteries of ancient Egypt. So Hatshepsut is one of the most famous ruling queens who ruled Egypt and in ancient history as well. Today we are going to discuss Hatshepsut from different perspectives. We will not only discuss her achievements and what she's done in Egypt, but we will discuss the mysteries about her death and about her history as well, and why her history was erased or deleted from ancient Egyptian records in purpose, and who was the pharaoh behind that. So that is the main idea behind our talk today, dealing with this subject, which is still a debating subject, still a mysterious subject, which is hardly to be deciphered, and there is different theories dealing with that. There is some of these theories which is classical, which is based on a very material and evidence collected and processed in a very early time in the early of the 19th and early of the 20th century. But there is a new theory which has had a very strong evidence, which is myself and more fan with it, which is I would like to represent today, about her death, about her real history, and who is the mysterious king who went after her, trying to get rid of her, even hundreds of years after her death, to make sure that this lady will not remembered in Egyptian history. Luckily, that we still know about Hatshepsut. Luckily, that after the destructions which is made in purpose for her monuments and for her temples, we still learn about her. So,
if we talk, Mr. Abbass, indeed about a few female names over the course of Egyptian history, where would Hatshepsut rank?
The best, the most important,
the first, right,
and the most powerful one.
Yeah.
So I covered actually that here in this channel, which is that was a different series about ruling queens of ancient Egypt, and we did that in like 5 or 6 episodes, and we dealt with Hatshepsut, Cleopatra, Tawesret, and other famous ruling queens in ancient Egypt. Not many, but what we know about them is like 5 or 6 of them. So in the beginning, let's give you some basic information about Hatshepsut for our audience, so they understand about the time period. And so Hatshepsut, she ruled Egypt nearly 3,400 years, 1400 BC, in the 18th dynasty, in the new kingdom of ancient Egyptian history. So she ruled Egypt that was an exception, by the way. That's for Hatshepsut to become in power in Egypt. And this exception came because her husband, Thutmose II, couldn't give a birth she couldn't give a birth of a son to be the heir to the throne. That is the default in ancient Egyptian ruling system, that the son is the one who inherits the power from the king, not the daughter. So for Hatshepsut to take the power, that was exception. So the problem that she couldn't give a birth of a son, she gave a birth of daughters. So the king Thutmose II, he has a second wife, and she gave a birth of Thutmose III. The king died young, leaving the queen and leaving Thutmose III. He was 11 or 12 years old in that time. So Hatshepsut, she descends from kings. So her father was a very successful pharaoh, king, Thutmose I. He is the first one who took the Egyptian army in campaigns and built an empire. He was a very like an empire builder, and he made it all the way to Euphrates River in Iraq. And she was very impressed with her father. And she lived in the court with her father, learning from him. She had a very good experience herself of how to run this country, and she had a very good ideal, which is her father as well. So Thutmose II, he didn't live long enough, and we don't have much achievements which is he left behind. So once he died, that left this seat which is empty. And Egypt in that time, that was in its golden age, with an empire extend as far as Iraq and as far as the heart of Sudan in that time. And that's why she had to step in, and she had to make sure that this country will be run in a good way. So to do that, it wasn't easy in ancient Egyptian culture, in ancient Egyptian religion, in ancient Egyptian politics as well. So to do that, she's violating a very important rule of ancient Egyptian religion, that the king is a male. It comes from Horus.
That the king is?
Male, not a female.
Right.
So it comes from Horus. Horus is the one who represents the divine power of ruler of kings in ancient Egypt. And there is a very important story, there is a very important mythology of the fights between Osiris and Set, and then Horus was born and was raised by his mother, the goddess Isis, until he became the king of Egypt and unified Egypt again. So, and this mythology or this story is the most important story in the ancient Egyptian mythology, ancient Egyptian religion. So, and Horus was a man or a male king, not a female. So in order for her to take this step, there are three things she has to do. First, she has to change her name. Hatshepsut is a very nice name, you know, which is the foremost of the noble ladies. One of the illustration photos I put is for her name, but that's a feminine name. So she has to take a masculine name, Ka-Matra, the soul of the justice of the sun god. So, and she took this name, and that was her coronation name. Second, so she has to declare herself as a co-regent with her stepson, which is Thutmose III. So, which is that's also which is she did. Third, which is very important, is to have she has to use Egyptian media to introduce her the proper way. And the proper way is not with her female's character and female body looking. No, the proper way is the way which is, you will see it actually in some of the photos. If we can come back to some of the early illustrations which is showing her temple, you will find that the statues in her temples, you'll find the sphinxes which is made for her, showing her in a man looking, in a man body. Sphinxes which is made for her, showing her with a beard, with the artificial beard, which is a symbol of leadership in ancient Egypt. So in the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, so she used the suffix pronouns, which is referred to here as a man, not as a woman. So in the title, like Musubiti, the king of the south and the north, she hardly, or she never used the word queen of the south and north, the king of the south of the north. So that's that's her temple, and these are the statues. If you look closely at the statues, that's a man body, and when you look at the beard, you know, that's also attached to her. So that's what she needs to do to be the king of Egypt.
So sir, you told us also that there is a mystery about her death.
Yes, you know, so before jumping to this point, you know, which is, there is, as a pharaoh, why we think that she's a good and powerful. To be a good pharaoh, you need to be a good builder, you need to keep the empire, you need to lead an army, you need to support an economy, and you need to lead temples as well.
She ruled for 20 years, right?
Yes, exactly, and she did all that.
That's the...
Exactly, that's one of her statues. So, and that's really one of her rare statues, which showing some feminine characters, which is really, we can find a statue like that. So, as a great builder, she built one of the most beautiful temples and unique temples in Egypt, which is her temple, Hatshepsut, and she erected two obelisks, which is nowadays they are the longest or the highest standing obelisks in Egypt, which is one of them still standing in Karnak Temple. So as she had a very strong influence in Karnak Temple, and Karnak Temple that was the center of the ancient Egyptian religion during the New Kingdom. So in terms of economy, she enhanced...
That's the one with the beard you were talking about.
So in terms of economy, she enhanced Egyptian economy by sponsoring a big expeditions to the mysterious land of Punt. By the way, that will be another episode. We will talk about the mysterious land of Punt, which is somewhere in East Africa, trading with East Africa. So also there is also she kept the empire, and at least she didn't lose any territories like other kings did. She kept the empire, which is as far as Iraq and to the heart of Sudan as well. So
a real legacy there.
Exactly. You know, so now we'll come to your point. You know, so who did it and why?
She was killed, or what? Or
that's still a debating subject, because we have her mummy, and the old theory before finding her mummy, it was saying that she was killed by her stepson. So the early archaeologists, which is they come from European backgrounds, and they looked at her history or what left behind her history, and they couldn't find the mummy, and they find all of her names chiseled out. They were looking for a suspect. They were like integrating and looking for a suspect. The suspect from their point of view is a stepson. The one which is 11 years old, the power was taken away from him. He was kicked out from the palace. He was sent to Karnak temple, and he's the one when he became like in 35 years old. He was powerful, and he came after her. He killed her, and then he destroyed her temples. But the surprise is we found her mummy. Her mummy was found nearly 10 years ago, or better to say identified 10 years ago. So there was this unknown mummy, and that 10 years ago there was some important evidence to link this mummy of the female pharaoh, of the female lady which is found in the Valley of the Kings, with Hatshepsut. So, and she wasn't killed. She died of diabetes.
Okay.
So, and that's why we have to look at for another theory from that. Also, on the other hand,
and that's conclusive. Is it like I know there's nothing like 100%, but is it more? You are more inclined to believe that theory?
Very strong, yes. For me, I'm more believing in this theory.
Yeah.
But I said earlier that we are talking about things happened which is 3,400 years ago, and we are putting our evidence based on what we found so far. Tomorrow we can find something different, which is then we can reconsider what we. But based on what we discover right now, I have a very strong reason to believe in the theory which I explained. So her mummy was found. She was not killed. Not only, there was also a very big question mark, which is always in my mind when I look at her history, even before finding the mummy or before identifying the mummy. So if she would like to get rid of her stepson Thutmose III, why she will send him to Karnak temple? Karnak temple was a center of power. Karnak temple was the best school, the best university in that time. Karnak temple, the priests of Karnak temple, they had a very strong influence in politics. So that's her mummy, by the way, and her mummy in the mummy room in the Egyptian Museum now. So it doesn't make sense. If you like to get rid of your stepson to send him to Karnak temple, that was like Harvard of the ancient world. So another thing which is also doesn't make sense, that she arranged a marriage between her stepson and her daughter. And her daughter, she had the pure royal blood. Her stepson have a half royal blood. That is the best way to guarantee that this boy will have no problem in getting to power, because he had the right woman, and that was also unexplained behavior from her if you'd like to get rid of him. So when I looked at her temple closely, I found that next to every chiseled out figure of Hatshepsut, a very unique text, a very interesting one. And it's written as following, which is unfortunately, I took different photos, but there was no time to bring one of these photos here because you cannot even easily find in line. So the text is saying that Nisu Biti, so Ir Minu, Sima Minu, which is a modification of this building, Ir en Nisu Biti, Wisr Matra, Sedib en Ra, Ir en Amun Ra. Again, Sima Minu, Ir en Nisu Biti, Wisr Matra, Sedib en Ra, Ir en Amun Ra. Means the modification or the restoration or the change or the correction. So there's the word Sma. Sma means like the correction or modification of these monuments. Minu is the monuments or the buildings, has been made. Ir-en has been made by Nisu Biti, the king of the south, on the north. Wisr Matra, Sedib en Ra, the powerful justice of the sun gods who was chosen by sun god. That is the coronation name of Ramesses II. And we found this text written next to every chiseled out figure of Hatshepsut. So which is mean that Ramesses II himself, and that was like 150 years after the death of Hatshepsut, he was proud to say that I am the one who gets rid, or the one who reads the memory of this lady from history.
So Mr. Samir, tell us what happened after her death and who ruled?
Exactly, so that's exactly what I'm talking about. So shortly after his death, from my perspective, that Thutmose III, which is her stepson, he had a very good memory for her. He supervised her death. He never touched anything which is she made by the lady, because this lady, she held him to come to the power, and she kept the country for him, strong for him.
Actually, she was also loyal to her husband by doing that.
Yes, but her husband, that will lead us to another subject, which is also a kind of relationship, which is, we think that it might be between her and her prime minister, like high official, Sinmut. So, and that's one of the reasons why the kings of the 19th dynasty, who comes from an army background, Ramesses II, one of them, who wanted to remove her record from the history. First of all, because she's a woman and she is not supposed to be in power, and he didn't like the idea that might give a good example of other women to do the same as well. He didn't like this idea at all. Second, so they believed or they thought in that time that there was a kind of relationship between her and the prime minister, Sinmut. And from their perspective, that brought shame to the royal palace, to the Egyptian like royal family in that time. So, and they even there was a rumors 100 or 150 years after her death, which is accusing her for having a relationship with the prime minister, and for the first time, which is in Egyptian art, a pornography art showing her with the prime minister that was encouraged in order to publicize the news about that.
Yeah, but that only came 100
about
plus
150 years.
So that was the work of Ramses II.
That from my perspective, yes, that is the work of the 19th dynasty kings, more specific Ramses II, and he was proud to say that in the text, which is he left next to the chiseled out figures of Hatshepsut. So it's still the mysterious part of the kind of relationship with Sinmut. Sinmut, he was very close to her, that's for sure. You know, we had some photographs actually of Sinmut. So he supervised raising her children. Sinmut is one of the commoners, and that might be one of the big problem, that the royal families, they are not supposed to marry or have a relationship with commoners.
But obviously he was a very successful minister, or else her rule wouldn't have been so good,
extremely
so brilliant.
You know, and he did his job very, very well. So his tomb he had two tombs. One of his main tomb is next to her temple, and that's one of the reasons to support these suspicions. So another reason as well. So in the Metropolitan Museum.
But what I meant when I said that she was loyal to her husband, I meant that she kept his son, she didn't harm his son, and he ruled after that, and she, like you said, she made him marry her daughter. Exactly. So she was loyal in that sense to her husband. She was
loyal to Egypt more than to her husband, because that is the best way for Egypt, you know, to stay strong. So the idea of the bad relationship, you know, or the fight or the anger between mother and stepmother, that's a kind of a Western influence in our society today. But back in that time, you know, there is many examples, which is even in our countrysides today.
Beautiful
the countryside in our Egypt, there is a very good stories of wives raised the stepsons, and that happens even in my family, which is not far away from me. So the Metropolitan Museum, when they excavated his tomb, they found his coffin smashed into more than 1,000 pieces. So the grave robbers, they were very active to go and steal tombs, and what they will do is they remove the lid, they will break the coffin into two halves, they will crack it into 3 or 4 pieces just to get the treasures inside the coffin. But to destroy it into 1,000 pieces, that was an act of an anger, and that's why we think that there was an anger in ancient Egypt about this relationship, and that's why they came after not only Hatshepsut, Sinmut as well, and they destroyed his tomb and his coffin. So there's still lots of other interesting things. Myself, now I'm really seriously thinking about writing the novel about Hatshepsut, a movie about Hatshepsut that will make much better fame and publicity than Cleopatra movie.
Yes.
Hopefully, because when I ask you where does she rank among the names, because Cleopatra, I mean, and other, of course, female names along the course of history. But in your view, and you're an Egyptologist, that's your domain. You say she should be she comes as number one.
As in power, in ruling, in successful pharaoh, yes, she comes in number one in ancient Egypt, and she's proud of every woman in the history of mankind in Egypt as well.
Great.
So, sir, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Samir Abbass, Egyptologist and researcher. Thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure.